I'm sure there are many cross-country runners in the audience, but those that are here would remember the Hollis Brookline Invitational. The first big race of the season with many teams attending. It was supposed to be a fantastic race. But as the race started and all runners rounded the final big hill and back into the woods, they were greeted with one of the worst trail sections in all New Hampshire. The puddles in that area were so big and expansive that they could hardly even be called puddles anymore. And the host team, instead of making a way to go around, had instead just slapped together a few pieces of wood and just thrown them onto the trail. It was the saddest attempt at bridge building I had ever seen, with boards that wobbled or outright collapsed as you walked on them, and narrow, shaky walkways. Some runners just decided to run through the water instead of risk running on them. That race stayed without me through the whole season, and as we ran throughout our own trails, I began to see problems in them as well. When it was time to decide what I was going to do for my senior project, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to fix the bow trails. My name is Tatum, and I did my senior project on fixing the bow trail system. I've spent a lot of time in the trails, running throughout its many hills and pathways, but by far the worst trail section is the portion behind the elementary school. It constantly has water on it, the rocks are a nightmare to run through, and it has a large fallen tree right in front of a stream that makes this section one of the worst to run through. Everyone on the cross-country team complained about this area throughout the years, with some going even around this section using the side of the road rather than run through this treacherous path. This year was no exception, and it may have even been the worst with the heavy rainfall we got this year. It made the trail an even bigger nightmare. I started out by clearing the forest around in this section, from overgrown trees and logs in the path, to carving a trail behind one of the worst sections so that people don't have to parkour through rocks. I also found a trail that another senior had done their project on, and I made the trail easily findable and better to walk through. I also cut back plenty of vegetation and shrubbery in the trails, and around halfway through the semester, when I ran out of shrubbery to clear and fallen trees that I could remove with an axe, this is when I got out the chainsaw. With this, I made short work of any of the big remaining logs on the trails. I then started the bridge building process, the main point of this project. I first went to a variety of places to find spots that needed them the most, and after I gathered dimensions and terrain information on the sites I chose, it was time to design the 3 bridges. I did a lot of research, both online and in person, looking at other trail bridges. Using that information and 3 years of engineering, I was able to design and come up with several possibilities. I finally settled on 2 different designs, a more complicated one designed to cross the stream, and a simpler one that I could build several of quite easily. For this project, I needed a lot of wood to construct the 3 bridges, and what better place to go than Lowe's? I'm not sponsored, by the way. After I got all the necessary materials, I needed to learn how to use a table saw. It wasn't super hard, but they're still very dangerous, so. After cutting all the wood into its proper dimensions, I began to work building each bridge. Using nails and screws, I first built the one that was to go behind the elementary school. I crammed it in my car and dragged it out to the spot. Putting it in place wasn't that difficult, and by then the bridge 1 was done and in place. For the next 2 bridges, I took materials and tools out to build sites as they were a bit smaller and easier to transport. Both are by the pond trail by the community center. At this point in the year, we'd gotten our first snow and it was cold building them, but it didn't take too much time, so I wasn't going to complain. Now, all the bridges are in place, sturdy, and ready to be used. And when springtime hits, I encourage all of you to go out onto the trails and see them for yourself. I learned a lot during this project, including how to use different equipment and tools a lot better, and talking to various people about getting materials and requesting build permits and stuff. I hope that all the work I've done will be used over the next few years from both the cross-country team and anyone else who uses the bow trails. Thank you all very much for listening to my talk, and are there any questions? I'd say the hardest part was the part I actually failed at, which was trying to get donations for wood, but it didn't really work out because they needed a lot of permits from the school, and I couldn't really find anyone to give me those, so I just ended up buying all the materials myself. Anything else?
Why not use the roof rack? Why don't you put it in the back of your car?
I don't know. Because we didn't have the straps, because they're not there. Anything else?
Did you go for a run on them?
I mean, I did try them out, but the cross-country season ended by the time I had all of them in place, so none of the runners have. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tatum.